I started Raison Silverware 7 years ago. Every product is completely handmade, handcrafted with our master craftsmen who excel in their craft. Raison's product line is one of the USPs of the brand. We have practically everything that any homemaker would want, from your beautiful thali sets for a stunning dinner setting or gift item for every special occasion to caviar bowls and the best bar sets. Our product line is something that is uniquely vast. These products are made from a flat sheet of metal, something that amazes me every single day. The detailing of handcrafting is what makes every Razon product so rich. We have something for everybody, for every special occasion, be it a festival with our beautiful Divinity collection, a setting for Diwali, or Christmas, or a beautiful occasion to have your friends over, perhaps for tea. Raison prides itself for its design, quality, and pricing, the three fundamentals for any brand to succeed in. Make it special, make it Raison. Well, that was me. So we start next with Monica, and you will tell us a little bit individually about your brands.
We are Habitat, and we say it's where vision meets detail. We provide spatial experiences in our business. For us, it's very important to have consciousness towards the people we are designing for. Might it be our clients, might it be the areas we are looking at. We look at a lot of cultural context. We look at how to conserve nature. For us, design and architecture is like a woven tapestry. It's like every element interacts seamlessly. We work very hard to try to get that music and harmony flowing. What I think is at the heart of our design is consciousness. We think that we are very conscious of the heritage that we come from. We look at the context. We are conscious of the users we work with, and always very conscious of the nature. I'd like to just pass the baton to the next one to speak so that we can have a conversation which is more engaging than just visuals.
Aparna Kaushik, next you'll tell us a little bit about your
Hello everyone, my name is Aparna Kaushik. I am an architect and an interior designer. At the heart of our practice, we believe simplicity, clarity of purpose, and a thorough understanding of functionality is what will make a design good or great. A good design is not only the one that is visually appealing, but it is also the one that often forms and fosters a deep emotional connect with the people who live in it. These are some of my projects. This is a project we did about, say, 8 years ago. I purposely chose this one. This is a project where I'm particularly, you can say that, proud of, where the nature has literally embraced the built form. We practically have not even cut a single tree. This is what is, I can say, synonymous with the intent of my practice. So this is a picture that I took about 2 years ago, candidly with my phone when I was visiting the family. You can see that natural light, natural elements, organic flow of spaces, these are some things that form the core of my practice. And we are here to have some very interesting conversations with very talented ladies here. I think I'll pass on to the next one.
Thank you, Aparna. Next will be Amrita Guha.
So at Untitled Design, we do not merely design spaces. We sculpt narratives, elevate lifestyle, and redefine aesthetics. Our projects are narratives waiting to be explored, canvases waiting to be adorned with stories of elegance, sophistication, and individuality. With each project, we reimagine aesthetics and shape legacies.
now we have my friend Sonali.
Hi, everyone. Talking about luxury, I'm really going to start talking about what luxury means to me and how we would look at luxury as we go through some of our thought processes and translate it into the work. What is luxury? Is it quiet and understated, or is it loud and outrageous, what you see over here? It's a combination, it's a balance. Does it mean it is related to arts and crafts, like a Patola or a Birkin bag or a Raja Ravi Verma? What is it that consists of luxury? Are we looking at luxury in our modes of transport? Is scooter a luxury, or is a Rolls Royce a luxury? For me, personally, using the metro is a luxury because that's the most beautiful thing our city has. Coming to what other things that we look at, what is it that defines luxury? It's the amount of space that we have. The space in different cities means different things to different people. An apartment in New York or Bombay versus a farmhouse in Delhi will mean something completely different to the inhabitants, though it may cost the same amount. So there are so many questions that what really is luxury. We are looking at luxury over here at an institutional level. I'm looking at CEPT here, which I grew up in, and I spent the best years of my life at Ahmedabad studying architecture. And I think it was one of the most awe-inspiring spaces. And to me, that was luxury at institutional level. Something that actually creates an intense feeling of well-being in a person is, according to me, the definition of luxury. And CEPT was one of my first experiences at true luxury. That, with the way we went on, it has come to get translated into the Thapar University that we've done, which, according to me, is luxury at an educational level, because it actually impacts your sensorial, your senses in all respects. And that's what I think defines luxury. Look at the spaces over here. They are absolutely awe-inspiring. People use every bit of the space and they want to be there. To me, that is luxury. You want to be in an institute to study. That is luxury because your senses are completely, how shall I say, it's a very sensorial experience. The classrooms, the pop of color juxtaposed against the quiet nature of the background is what creates the sensorial experience. So to me, luxury is all about the sensorial experience, whether it's a product or a space or a building or nature. It's all about your senses. This is a house. Again, it's all about the senses. As you come in, you look at this beautiful sculpture sitting in a courtyard. It's something that inspires you. It is the gentle background, the colors of the background, which are all very soft neutrals, juxtaposed against the vibrant art, is something that impacts your senses. And to me, that is luxury. Of course, combined with perfect lighting that actually enhances the entire space. Looking at good art, but in the perfect surrounding, is luxury. So that is what this is. Having natural light while you bathe is luxury, and that's what this is. To have a garden on a terrace is luxury because it's nature. You're bringing in nature. And the last thing I want to talk about is luxury in public space. I think today we have completely lost that luxury. Luxury that we grew up with, where we could walk and cycle, is gone. And unless we as architects and designers come together and recreate some of these beautiful moments and bring them back into our lives, we are going to land up, as you see on top, which we are today. Instead of that, if we bring in here it's just a small example of pedestrianizing and making a garden into the inner circle of Connaught Place, and what an experience it would be. Again, it is something that would, it's a sensorial experience. It is something that would create an intense feeling of well-being. And that's what we would look for. And that is what luxury is for me. Thank you.
Wow, I'm glad I was at the beginning of that because after this, that was seriously, I mean, so distinct for everything that you individually do. And I love the sense of luxury, which actually is more and more lacking in our lives, Sonali. But what a wonderful body of works. And I'm so happy to be on this amazing panel with you wonderful ladies. You know, when I was growing up, I'm from Calcutta, Bengali matriarchal society, the women decide everything. We grew up with grandmothers, mothers. I mean, there was no concept of interior design as such. You know, we grew up with heirlooms, we grew up with old carpets and things around us which was collected from great-grandmothers and, you know, just family things which our mothers actually put together. I don't think my mother could even move a vase without asking my Thakuma, that's my grandmother, but just the way things were. In the 90s, you started hearing about interior decorators. Well, architects before that. There were architects before that, but the interior decorators that went along with the architecture, which was kind of an alien concept. And in the 90s, you heard about these amazing names. They were all men, you know, somehow. And today to be sitting with you amazingly talented, accomplished ladies is such an honor. Very small part, not a small part, I do the accessorizing after you all finish your bit, which I think kind of transforms a house into a home. I hope you agree with that. And so I'm going to ask individually some questions and we're going to have a fun chat. So, Sonali, you know, what is it that, how have you been like working towards changing the role of women actually in design? And what does the future look like to you?
Kalyani, first of all, I want to say that when you talked about 90s and you started hearing, I was one of them. I was there in the 90s.
No, so were we. But you know, the concept of
So,
interior
okay,
decoration.
I come from an extremely emancipated Gujarati family where we were never looked at as girls. We were looked at as individual human beings, you know. We were individuals in our own right. And we were told from day one that there's going to be nobody looking after you. You better learn to fend for yourselves and never depend on anyone. So it's a concept that we grew up with. So for me, not working was inconceivable. I mean, my parents would have killed me if I even talked about not working, you know. So it was that kind of a situation. And I have never really looked at myself as a woman. I'm an architect. I spent 5 years studying architecture, where I worked 15 hours a day, like everyone else. From then on, I have done a 55 to 60-hour week for all these years. And I see no reason why I should be differentiated in any way from anyone else. So that is where I think it's, if you project yourself as a woman who needs concessions, then you will get the same response back. But if you don't project yourself as that, I think the others are bound to fall in line. So that's the way forward.
Very well said. You know, this is a question I get asked very often, but this is exactly what I would say as well to answer that. That, I mean, you're doing a job, and if you do it well, I think that's really what really matters today.
Because right in the beginning of my career, I had a very mean client, and he didn't want me to work on his project. It was a house that we were doing. And between me and my partner, who was also my husband, he thought he would work on it. But it turned out that I was working on it, and he made my life miserable. He gave me so much rubbish, and I will never forget that for the rest of my life. But I was as obstinate as you can get. So I hung on to it. I hung on to him. I took all that shit. I gave it back to him. And I said, I will finish this house. And I went ahead and finished it. And at the end of the project, I think that's when I felt vindicated, is when he called up to say, would you like to come and collect the last check? So I think eventually, if you hang on and you don't give up, they will fall in line. All problems will get sorted. But you need to be able to hold the horns and take the bull by the horns, you know?
Absolutely. And I think it takes a little bit of perseverance, and we've all been through a little bit of meanness with clients, but I think at the end of the day, they're happy because they also came to you for a reason. Yeah. And yes, that's another conversation altogether, dealing with clients. Amrita, what a beautiful presentation. It's true luxury that you have created through your work. I mean, the beautiful projects and the presentation we saw. What kind of defines luxury really for you? I mean, not in a holistic manner that Sonali's already explained, which was beautiful. But when you're creating a space of luxury, what are the key things that you take into consideration?
So for us, luxury is not about the price tag. It's always about the craftsmanship. It's always about the experience. It's always about the context. And it's about who they are, about clients. So every project has its unique interpretation of luxury. Since we are storytellers, all of us designers are storytellers, and every story has to be unique to the project, to the context. So, we have had challenges 20, 25 years back, at the time when most of the projects in India, the aspirational factor was looking towards China, and that obsession of getting furnitures from China. And it was something that we had to fight tooth and nail. And it wasn't easy, because here we were promoting handcrafting, we were promoting Indian material stones, let's say cast in situ over a beautiful Italian marble. Because we felt very, very strongly about who we are, and we were very confident about our storytelling. And we were not wanting, we wanted to layer narratives rather than getting very impersonal furnitures and objects of art to adorn the home. So it's been a long journey, but yes, slow and steady, just the way she said, that we've all had our fair share of, where we have stumbled.
Challenges.
Challenges. And I think those are the paving stones that sort of create a path when you don't give up and you know you are right. There is a gut feeling that says that, no, you know what, we don't want to follow the herd. We want to do something absolutely unique, and we feel, maybe not today, maybe after the project gets over, maybe 5 years down the line, you will get that call and you will say, you will hear the client saying that, we didn't realize that point in time, but today we do what you've done for us. So we've had lots of clients. I mean, we always go back to a lot of heirloom pieces when we do a home, because for us, those pieces hold a lot of history, a lot of soul for the family, a lot of stories, and we want the next generations to know what it is all about. So when we are doing a home, we always speak to the clients, we always have a lot of conversation about who they are and what are the old. I mean, it could be a old sari, it could be a pan ka, those little bowls, pan bata. It could be nutcrackers. It could be a old, katha stitch. It could be anything. It's how we connect about bridging the gap between old and new, and about generations. For us, that's very, very important, that it's contemporary. The whole language is contemporary and yet it has a lot of history. So the grandparents, the great grandparents who are also coexisting in the house, they feel that they belong. They feel that some bit of their legacies have,
And not just been demolished and wiped out.
absolutely,
Which is-
absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
that's wonderful. But also the fact that, materials and the finishing that we have in India today, I mean, it's world class, I mean, there's nothing lacking. I mean, there's so many times people actually come into my store and saying, where is this imported? I'm like, yeah, from Noida, Sector 2, So, I mean, there's actually, you don't need to go anywhere anymore. I mean, look at this design center, I mean, that, ID. This is such a great representation of made in India. You really don't need to go
We have to be more like the
anywhere.
Japanese, believe in ourselves,
Yes.
believe in what we
That-
have, rather
that
than
is
forever
exactly-
looking
the
outwards,
previous
start looking
conversation,
inwards.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. The Japanese don't think beyond their own design and own sensibility, and the whole world. I mean, we love it, don't we, in some way, whether you're minimalist or a maximalist. I mean, Japanese design. So they embrace their culture so beautifully, and we have so much to offer, honestly. Monica, sustainability always comes up in conversation as a hashtag, especially when you're talking about luxury, I feel. With the kind of vast projects that you do and the kind of projects that you do, how do you put sustainability into your work? Because you spoke about consciousness, and which is something which is the ethos of your work, and you really are passionate and you believe in it. So how is it sometimes challenging? Because clients, as Amrita was saying, it's very rarely that especially when building something new, a new home, you just want to wipe out everything and raise it to the ground and then build from there. So how do you manage to do that with the consciousness that you're so aware of?
So sustainability is the buzzword today, and putting it parallel to luxury, I think, is a need for today. There is no reason why luxury cannot be sustainable. Sustainability should not be looked upon with like a little lens of constraint. It should also be looked upon a continuous flow of life. We need to be sustainable. We are sustainable. If we are going to build a house, it is going to be on this planet, it's going to be on this earth, it's going to use materials. And why not be conscious about picking up the materiality which is called sustainable today? But was it not sustainable always? I think we as a civilization, we are one of the most sustainable civilizations. We don't find it very difficult with our clients to really harp about sustainability because we are not wearing it on our sleeves, but we fundamentally believe in making houses, making spaces, making areas which are going to be there for a long time. We don't believe in excess, and if there is excess, it is excess of the ease of living. For me, it is even sustainable to build a house which has got a good flow of air, it's got natural light coming in. Here, when I talk about designing, we do put lights of all kind of lux, and then we also discuss that, is it sustainable to do this? But is it sustainable to live on this planet? Also is a question. So as designers, I don't think I do find it very difficult to fight about sustainability because I think a whole lot of us sitting here, we fundamentally believe in it. So I would rather say, yes, this is what India is all about. Our civilization is about sustainability, less wastefulness, more of perhaps circularity. And we believe in it. We don't believe in wasting water. All these new words and conversations that we have today, I think, are a core principle taught in our colleges and followed by whole lot of us, and I can speak for all 5 of us on that.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, I was just speaking at a panel in Dubai a couple of weeks ago, and again, the whole topic on sustainability came up. And I said all the concepts and ideas that we grew up with as children suddenly got a definition about 25, 30 years ago, and that was sustainability. We always followed them. I mean, we ate fresh food. We did not eat processed foods. Due to cost reasons, we always used more natural and local materials in our projects, in our homes, in our buildings. We built, we lived, we had better air, obviously. We cycled and walked to most places. So we were very sustainable, and it suddenly got a definition, and that was sustainability.
It's all about thoughtfulness, it's all about intentionality, something which was getting lost at one point.
No, I just feel that it's become almost like a, hashtag. And honestly, we have to do a little bit more in everything that we practice, in all our works, and in not just us sitting here, but in everything that we do, whether, when we were kids, like, put off the lights in your room when you leave, whether it's saving water while brushing your teeth. I don't know, it comes into every aspect of our life on a daily basis. And it should not just be something that we discuss over and over again and make it into a hashtag. We all need to practice
I believe
it.
automation is highly sustainable. I mean, it kind of stops a mother from shouting to the child all the time.
Aparna, taking on from actually what we've been discussing, you do these beautiful projects for your wonderful clients and let's bring in a little bit of humor. How easy is it to maintain what they already have into what you want to do and what they want? Tell us a little bit about how you manage to keep your own design sensibilities, obviously, and make your space with marrying all of this together.
So clients come to us often with this whole list of requirements that, sometimes they would say that, look, we want a house to look wow. Anybody who enters should say wow. And then there'll be another family members, but we don't want much of maintenance. Make it very, very maintenance free. So my response often to that is that, since I do only homes, we layer the houses. There are parts of the house that you want to show, you want to entertain, socialize, sort of that's a public face of your house. Then there is another part of the house that is for you, for your own daily living. And, we do these big estates. So we have the luxury of space and layering the house in that way. So there is the part which is for you, your private spaces, how you'll hang out with your legs up in your lounge without having to worry that you'll break a vase or something. And then there is the backbone of the house, which are the services. So we layer the house in that manner, and often I find it very easy to talk them out of this. And obviously the fundamental, is that a house has to live, breathe, on a day-to-day basis, and undoubtedly it has to look and feel pretty. It has to have an emotional connect with the people who live in it. Also, I feel designing for a home is mostly an intuitive process. It's, I can't say that, okay, this is the method that I will follow for all my projects. It's generally informed study of the brief that is given to us by the clients. Sometimes from the brief, you also come to a conclusion that this is what they are not saying now, but they might need it in due course of time. And also the environment that I'm going to be building this architecture in. So I think it's a mixed combination, and my experiences, my personal likes, and my conditioning over the years. It's a sum total of, all these things. Interestingly, to follow through the conversation we were having, I grew up in a house which was built in 1907 in Old Delhi. And I still remember those 13 inches walls, a big courtyard in the center. I grew up watching, there was a room where we had photo frames of our dead ancestors who also lived in that house. Sometimes, and then we recently moved out of that house. I mean, that house stood the test of time for more than 100 years. My grandparents, my father, myself, my brother got married in their house. There were kids, there were deaths. That house has seen so much, even, if you ask me about my fond memories, It's not, none of them is in the new house. It comes from the fact that, playing around the courtyard, there was a function around the courtyard. This is something that I feel that is gone missing today in the kind of work we are doing as a fraternity. I feel that when a client walks in and says that, look, we need a new house, and my first question to them is, how old is your house? And the generalized answer is 15 to 20 years. We want to do something different. In those days, this was the in thing to do. Now I want something very, different. This incessant need to be different, and it really makes me wonder what has gone wrong. Like, are the layouts not flexible, or they were not planned for an expanding family, which is so predictable in India, like how we live. Indian families are the most predictable way of living in the world. Have we not planned for it? Is that we are aping some Scandinavian glass box in 48 degrees? And then we are also at the same time talking about sustainability and saying, look, my air conditioning has a LEED certification, or it has that inverter technology that saves on energy. I think we are kind of living in a paradox, where we talk a lot about materials, ethically sourced materials, but why are we breaking these houses in every 20 years? Imagine the loss of resources, the time, the effort, the energy, the materials that have gone into it. I think that's a much larger loss than just talking about a few materials that come from somewhere, or, sourced locally. I feel there's no harm in appreciating talent anywhere in the world. Be it Europe or America or anywhere else, including our country. We can get talent from everywhere. But, the fact is that, how do we make homes today that are like, generations that stand the test of time for generations? How do the materials not get obsolete? Are we following trends? Should we need to follow trends? I think that's a conversation that needs to be explored more than looking into just one aspect of sustainability.
I think this is such an important point, especially when it comes to homes. Coming from Calcutta, there were all these homes, like historical homes, including mine, and they're all grazed to the ground today. No one is restoring, and as you said, make space, because the homes are large enough. You can plan within. And I wish we had stricter rules for, it is there in India, but I think it's not really followed, which is a punishable law, actually, after a heritage building, as they call it. But it doesn't have to be heritage like a museum. It could be even your old home, but it's not followed through. And this is the pity of it all. And Aparna, this is such an important point.
Kalyani, it's also
to restore within, and not like in Europe. You can't break down buildings or homes. I mean, there are such strict laws about it.
I went to architecture school in the 80s.
Yeah.
And Ahmedabad, CEPT was in Ahmedabad. And Ahmedabad had such beautiful Art Deco homes with, those three red, green, blue columns in terrazzo, beautiful. I mean, they were lovely, lovely homes. And I think in the next 20 years, from the 90s to maybe 2015, I would say 80% of them are gone. That's the pity.
I mean, even in Calcutta, Amrita, you and I have grown up in Calcutta. I mean, look at those homes. I mean, how many of them do you see? None left. They're these horrible, ugly buildings.
It's a
now,
pity, but we have been doing a lot of renovation work, architecture as well as interior. So when a project comes to us, just the way Aparna is saying, we first vet it. And we actually see, because today the aspirational aspect overtakes everything else. Now, is it actually a need for them to rebuild, raise it to the ground? I remember for the past 20 years, we have done several renovation projects wherein the complete renovation in terms of the architecture, the interior, it still holds a lot of essence to what it was. It's not that we are wiping the slate clean and we are completely doing something which is so alien that they can't recall what the house looked like.
but to have the essence still existing and to create a lot of practical, imbibe a lot of practical aspects which one needs today as the family grows. We have done several of those. And although as projects they have been nightmares, but because renovation is very, very tough. But I would say the joy we have given to the family after the renovation is complete, it's unparalleled. And I wish in Calcutta more homes would. It's actually
So may I just have a little thing on this, that we all get projects which are either fresh or for renovations. We have started discerning what really needs renovating. Like if you have a house which is 1907, or if you have something which is 50 years old, which has those big, walls and things. Well, we also get houses which are, say, 15, 20 years old. And sometimes I don't mind raising them to the ground and give them a better solution which will take care of generations to come for them. Because at one point, there was architecture which was happening for the sake of happening. Everything was glass walls, anything which was new and trendy. So I do feel that perhaps all of us hold a responsibility to encourage and also educate the people who come to us to move towards investing into more the buzzword sustainable products, to make make spaces which can handle multi-generations together. Of course, hold on to the heirlooms, perhaps make them spend money on things which are going to have more longevity, and perhaps put their Kanjivaram sari into an absolutely beautiful art piece and put it in their living room. So I do feel as designers, we also hold a bit of responsibility and we should be held to it.
Actually, unfortunately, what starts driving are the market forces and the economics. And that's where we cannot control.
Sonali, I think it's a younger generation which is also a problem. You know how they want to just change everything and just
No,
we
but
want
you know, like
modern,
when you want
we
to-
want contemporary. Like people come with their old grandmother's silver, to my store saying we want something more contemporary. I said, this you cannot sell or get rid of because you will never get this again.
yeah.
There are certain things money can't buy, And I've sent so many of these young couples back. I said, this you can't. You buy
No,
something
but
new
you know what
from me,
happens
but
is that
not,
all these old bungalows that I'm talking about in Ahmedabad, the reason they are gone is because of the land value. Apartments have come up. They've
Yeah,
changed
it's the
land
economics
use.
of the whole thing,
And
yes.
apartments have come up, so they have absolutely, the compulsion is so strong that they just give into it. So that's where the problem is. Also,
Definitely
it's
the
not a,
economics
it's
of
not
it,
a
for sure.
like singular problem. It's a very, it's a problem at many
It's a
different
very
levels.
wholesome problem. It's a very 360 degree.
If we are talking about luxury, let's actually promote more responsible luxury, which is less indulgence and more longevity. I think that takes care of all sustainability, all luxury, all designing, everything in one little package.
I have a question for Kalyani. So, Kalyani, you wear quite a few hats. So, one is the gorgeous silverware that you're doing, raison. Then you do a lot of styling. I believe you curate, and you consult art. And you also are a part of this Netflix series. How do you manage to wear multiple hats? And, what are the challenges that you have? And also, what are the paybacks in terms of, it keeps you
I
hopping
think I'm
from one...
overworked and underpaid for sure. There are no paybacks
Each
here.
one of us is.
Hello, we are architects,
Oh my
remember?
Believe you me, you are better off there.
I think we as
I'm
women...
sure Netflix is better.
Oh, that was the most challenging, let me tell you. No, that was fun, but I have gone from one thing to the other and completely diverse and different things, and that's going to take a while to kind of talk about. But I think we women, we are all like Ma Durgas with 10 hands. We're always multitasking. We are mothers, we are wives, we are sisters and daughters, and I just think God just made us like this. And you just have to, I've taken up opportunities and the risks that came with it. I've very rarely said no. It's always been like, okay, why not? Running for publications for Indian Express. I mean, what did I know about running for magazines? And that too, nothing that I didn't, there were four completely diverse magazines, running Dior and bringing into the whole exodus of luxury retail into India in 2006. So many stories to tell, such wonderful experiences, and now I have my own brand. And art, I think, has kind of been a huge part of my life because of my mother, and now my daughter's in the arts as well. So yeah, I mean, I think we women just have that. All of us on this panel, I mean, we have the ability to multitask. It's also how much you do want to take up, and I get bored very easily, so I'm just keeping myself busy doing different things.
Take it
But thank
from,
you.
for the younger generation, to go back into one of our conversations where we were talking about the younger generation does not want to go back into the culture and wants to have a no headache kind of
No
culture.
headache, absolutely no headache. The father can build the palace. We will live in it, but we don't want no headache.
Non-tarnish.
No, but I
Enjoy the perks, but we don't want no headache.
somehow I have a little bit of an opinion here of my interaction with the younger generations through various educational institutions, and perhaps being a parent as well and living the life in India that I've lived. I do appreciate their point of view a lot. They are way more sustainable than a whole lot of us are, because they understand that access is not really the bottom line of luxury today. For them, time, freedom, understanding that they should be able to do what they do is what they call luxury. So if we are talking of luxury, I do want to give an ode to the coming generation that, guys, we need to learn something from you, but do take a cue from us as well. We are not so bad.
No, it's
Sarah,
like
hope
I
you're
always
listening.
say that I love a great garden as long as it's not mine.
Yeah, but on the other hand, silver is the more, everyone comes and says that, all these young people say, oh, but polishing. I said, you're sitting and polishing it yourself, really? This has been lovely. Thank you very much.